2001 through 2006 Mini Cooper R50 valve cover replacement. I'm Brian Essa from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the steps of replacing the valve cover. So this model is the non-turbo or non-supercharged model Mini Cooper. To get started, we're going to remove this top engine cover here. You're going to need a flat blade screwdriver. You're going to pry this little tab back a little bit on both left and right side, and then you're going to lift the cover straight up and off. It also may get snagged on a few things in here. You may have to pull the hoses and stuff off like this. So on the vehicle I'm working on has rodent damage here, so I'm going to replace the wires, ignition wires. You guys can just pull them out like this and flip them up. So you're going to remove all 4 ignition wires like this. And don't worry about the firing order. The firing order is written onto the top of the coil here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So if your ignition wires are in bad shape, now might be a good time to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish popping these off. After that, I'm going to remove the 4 10mm bolts holding the coil down. To make quick work of that, I'm going to use my Milwaukee M18 fuel 3/8 impact gun. This little gun makes life easy, especially doing jobs like this. So once you get the coil unbolted, the bolts are not going to come out. They're going to stay in the coil like this. So you're just going to lift the coil up, and then you're just going to pull it over towards the front of the car and just tuck it out of your way. So the wire loom here for the injectors is in our way of a couple bolts. So we need to open these, flare these little tabs back right here. And then we need to lift the injector harness upwards. We're not going to unplug the injectors. We're just going to lift it up just enough to get access to the 2 bolts underneath right here. So you're only going to lift the harness up 1/4 inch or so. And that's all the room you need to get to the 2 bolts here and here. Now we can remove the breather hose here by squeezing the clamp and pulling the hose off and kind of tucking it off to the side. Now on the side of the valve cover next to the oil cap here is a little electrical connector, and there's a little tab that you'll pry and slide it off the little perch. On my particular one, it's already been broken. So you'll slide it off the loom holder and then just push it to the side. You don't need to unplug it. So on the passenger side of the valve cover here is a vent hose. If yours is soft and pliable, you can pull the hose off, but mine is rock hard. So what I'm going to do is just remove the mounting screw here and pull the whole assembly off. To make quick work of that, I'm going to use my Milwaukee M12 ratchet here with an 8mm socket and go ahead and pull that connector off, and then just push it to the side for now. So right next to the vent line is a couple hoses and lines here. We're going to pop them out of the little holders here and just push them off to the side. And then after we get the lines popped out of the holder, we need to pull the little connector off the stud that it's mounted on. And to do that, you can either twist it. If you're lucky, it'll come off, or pull straight up on it. Or you can use a little flat blade screwdriver or pry bar underneath and pry upwards, and it'll pop off. Just under that, there's the wire loom is held onto the stud here. You're going to pull that off too. And then you can start removing the 8mm bolts all the way around the perimeter of the valve cover. To make quick work of it, I'm going to use the Milwaukee impact gun here again. Having tools like this makes a big difference in removing fasteners really quick and efficiently. If you were to remove all 12 fasteners on this valve cover by hand, it would take you about 10 to 15 minutes. But with this little impact gun, you can do it in about a minute. So if you're interested in investing in a tool like this, I'll leave a link for it in the description of the video. I will also link up all the other tools that I use and the parts that I use in this video. So after you get all 12 of the fasteners loosened up, they're not going to come out of the valve cover. You can pull them. They're not designed to come out of the valve cover. So once you get them all unbolted, you can just lift the valve cover straight up. You may need a pry tool to help pry underneath it and pry the valve cover off. And you're also going to lift the injector harness. You may have to lift it upwards a little bit and pull it back towards you a little bit to help clear the valve cover. As you're lifting the valve cover out, you're going to have to push the hoses and lines off to the side, and you may have to twist the valve cover just a little bit to clear the injector harness here. And then once you get it free of all that, it'll come straight out. Now that you got the valve cover off, we can pick the old gasket out of the cover here. I just use a flat blade screwdriver, picked the corner and peeled it off. Now we need to remove the tube seals here. And the way I do that is flip the valve cover over like this. Then I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver and a little hammer, and I'm going to put it inside the little holes here, and right at the end, kind of angle it at the side, and you tap the end of it with a hammer, and that'll drive the seal out the bottom. So you'll do that for all 4 of them. Now we're ready to clean the valve cover up. So you can use brake clean, parts washer, or soap and water, whatever you like to use, but clean the valve cover. Here are the part numbers for the replacement valve cover I'm using. I will link this up in the description of the video. That way if you need to pick these up, you can get them there. So now we need to install the tube seals, and you just line it up with the orifice here and push them in with your thumb as far as you can get them. And then what I like to use is a little rubber mallet or hammer like this, and then lightly tap the seals in all the way until they're fully seated. After that, you can insert the valve cover gasket into the valve cover by pushing it into the little slot like this and make sure it fully seats. Then what we're going to do is clean this cylinder head surface. What I like to do is wipe the cylinder head away from the internal parts of the engine, so you're going to push it away. That way the dirt and debris doesn't fall inside the cylinder head. To help get some of the debris off, I like to take a little bit of brake clean like this, and I like to spray it directly into the rag and soak the rag with brake clean, and then I use the rag to wipe the debris and old oil off. After the mating surface is all cleaned up, we can take the valve cover and reinstall it back on top of the cylinder head. So you're going to flare the injector harness out of your way and flare all the hoses off to the side, and then take your time to slowly lower the valve cover down into position. And so once the valve cover is back into position, I will use the electric impact gun with its variable trigger to slowly run the bolts down, and just till they barely touch. So you'll feel it bottom out. You don't want to hammer the trigger, you want to ease the trigger. If you're doing this by hand, you just run them down by hand until you feel them bottom out. Once we get all 12 of the fasteners tightened down or snug down, then we're going to torque them. Without a tool like this, it's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to run all these bolts down. But with the electric tools like this Milwaukee M18 Fuel 3/8 drive impact gun here, you can do it in about a minute, minute and a half, all 12 fasteners. So now I'm going to use a torque wrench set up to 12 Newton meters or 9 foot-pounds, and I'm going to tighten all the bolts down in a specific pattern. So I printed out a diagram of how the bolt pattern is to be tightened. This is courtesy of All Data. So they want me to start in the center and the back of the valve cover like this, and we're going to torque the bolts down, and you're going to ease the torque up. You don't want to jerk the torque wrench. If you jerk the wrench, you won't get an accurate torque. So you're just going to follow the pattern on the printout that I printed out. So this will be number 2, and then after you get this one torqued down, you'll move to 3, and so on until all 12 bolts are torqued down. So that was number 2, and then we'll go to number 3, which on the diagram it says it's right here. So we'll go to 3, and then we'll go to 4, and then we'll go to 5, 6, 7, 8, and then so on, and just keep following the diagram. Once it's torqued down, you can go ahead and put the injector or loom back into place and push it back into place. Now you can take the vent hose, put it back on with the hose clamp, put the wire loom back over the stud on the passenger side of the vehicle, and then you can put the little clamp that held the hoses down, put those in position. Then you can go ahead and put the vent line back on and start the bolt, tighten that back up, and make sure all the hoses and stuff are re-secured into their little spot here. Then you can re-secure the wire loom holder here on the driver's side of the valve cover here, and make sure that's secure. Then you can take the coil and put it back into position and bolt the coil back up. Go ahead and tighten those down. The electrical connector on the coil is facing the firewall, so it comes from that angle. So go ahead and tighten those bolts back up. Now you can go ahead and re-secure the ignition wires. If you're replacing them like I am, go ahead and mount them onto the coil, and they're numbered on the coil, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go ahead and install the plug wires back into the tubes here, and make sure you push them all the way in until they fully seat. So my ignition wires are numbered, so I'm gonna go ahead and start with number 4 back here, kind of work backwards here, and then, so I'll go ahead and install it on the number 4 port. Then I'll go to number 3, and I'll kind of route the wires to make sure that they're flowing right, and then go to number 3, and then I'll go to number 2, and then number 1 until all of them are plugged in. Now we're ready to put the top engine cover back on, and the little connectors just go around the fuel rail, and then you line up the little tabs here, and you just push it on until it clicks. When installing the top cover, it may be beneficial to remove the dipstick, and once you got the cover secure, you can reinstall the dipstick. And that'll complete the job of replacing the valve cover on a 2001 through 2006 Mini Cooper R50. I'm Brian Essett from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. Encourage you to subscribe. Invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. And also to remind you that I'll link up all the tools and parts in this video in the description. So thank you for watching.